CIA mind control project, MK Ultra, was essentially a continuation of the work that began in the Japanese and Nazi concentration camps. Not only was it roughly based on those experiments, but the CIA actually hired the I can't. They actually, so this is a fucking $5 word that I'm not going to be able to pronounce. They actually hired POW Japanese and Nazi torturers to come out and explain what they had found on their research for what they did during the war. So the CIA actually approached prisoners of war, both Nazis and Japanese torturers, and asked them, hey, you did this shit. What happened? Like, talk to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For example, Nazi doctors had conducted extensive experiments with mescaline at the Dachau concentration camp. And the CIA was very interested in figuring out whether mescaline, which is another hallucinogenic drug, I didn't know if you knew that, could be key to mind control. That was one of their biggest venues of investigation. So they hired Nazi doctors who had been involved in those projects to advise them. Another thing the Nazis provided was information about poisonous gases like sarin, which is still being used. Nazi doctors came to America to Fort Derrick in Maryland, which was the center of the project, to lecture to CIA officers to tell them how long it took people to die from sarin gas.
Wow.
On the more extreme experiments, Goblet conducted overseas, Goblet and the CIA established secret detention centers throughout Europe and East Asia, particularly in Japan, Germany, and the Philippines, which were largely under American control in the early 1950s. And therefore, Goblet didn't have to worry about any legal entanglements in these places. CIA officers in Europe and Asia were capturing enemy agents and others who they felt might be suspected persons or were otherwise what they called expendable. They would grab these people and throw them into cells and test all kinds of not just drug portions, but other techniques like electroshock therapy, extreme temperatures, sensory deprivation, isolation, and other torturous methods. All in the meantime, bombarding them with questions, trying to see if they could get them to break down resistance and to find a way to destroy the human mind and ego. So these were projects designed not only to understand the human mind, but to figure out how to destroy people physically and mentally. And that made Goblet, although in some sort of a way a compassionate person, certainly
I don't think I'd throw around compassionate like that. But.
Yeah, I know. That's why I just chuckled when I saw that. Certainly the most prolific torturer of his generation. So, yeah. That's more up to par. On how these experiments were unsupervised, this guy, Sidney Goblet, had a license to kill. He was allowed to requisition human subjects across the United States and around the world and subject them to any kind of abuse that he wanted, even up to the level of it being fatal, yet nobody looked over their shoulder. Goblet operated almost completely without supervision. He had some sort of a checkoff from his tutorial boss and from his real boss, Richard Helms, and from the director of the CIA, Alan Dulles. But none of them really wanted to know what he was doing. This guy had a license to kill. He was allowed to requisition human subjects across the United States and around the world and subject them to any kind of abuse that he wanted, even up to the levels of it being fatal, yet nobody looked over their shoulder. He never had to file serious reports to anybody. I think the mentality must have been, this project is so important. Mind control, if we can master it, is the key to being the number one global power of the world.
That's the key. Mind control?
I guess that's what they were aiming for, Joe.
That sounds like it.